Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reading the top 20 romances in the Amazon store. Now, I've done this video one time before where I read the top 10 Kindle romances in the Amazon store, and I had a really fun time with it. Now, I didn't come away from that video with a ton of all-time favorites, but I really like seeing what's hot, what's new, what's fresh in the Kindle store so I can let you know what you should be picking up and what you should be, in my opinion, steering clear of. Last time I updated y'all at the 50% mark and when I was finished with each book. This time I'm just going to be updating you when I am, immediately done with the book, giving you my initial thoughts and feelings, just kind of how I'm feeling fresh off of that book. And for the books that are present on the top 20 list that I have already read before, I will be sitting down and giving you my thoughts and feelings in a more abbreviated fashion. So the first, I think like 4 or 5 books I have already read. So let me go ahead and tell you how I feel about those books and whether or not I think you should pick them up, and then we can get into the more vloggy portion of the video. In spot number 20, we have Flawless by Miss Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series and is a book that I personally really enjoyed. I think this is maybe my least favorite of the series. I feel like that's a good thing because you can only kind of go up from here, and that being said, I still gave this book 4 stars. It's about our 2 main characters, Rhett and Summer. I want to say he's like a rodeo clown, just kidding. He is a bull rider, and he gets in a little bit of hot water at the beginning of the story because he has a sponsorship, I think by milk, and he says in public that he absolutely hates milk, which is not a great look if you were partnering with a creamy white beverage. So our heroine Summer is part of a PR agency that her dad runs, and now she is in charge of babysitting Rhett, essentially. And it's not an enemies to lovers situation, but they definitely kind of butt heads with their kind of contrasting personalities, and it's just typical Elsie Silver. You've got a really strong heroine who knows what she wants and maybe has a little bit of trauma in her past. You've got a hero who is definitely commanding, but in a way that is not too alpha hero. I just love the way that Elsie does romance, and if anything, I think I want to reread this book very soon because I know, again, initially, the first time I read it, I was like, I like it, but I don't love it, but maybe a second time around I would love it. That being said, this is definitely one that you should pick up, and you should definitely pick up all of the books in this series so far. I, for one, am really looking forward to the 4th book that's coming out quite soon. The Fine Print by Miss Lauren Asher. Imagine the Disneyest adult that you know. Promptly hand them this book because this is a book that I think, in my humble opinion, only Disney adults will really enjoy. This book is about our 2 main characters, Zara and Rowan. Rowan is the grandson, essentially, of a fictional Walt Disney, and when his grandfather passes away, he leaves a will that tells his 3 grandchildren, hey, this is what I need you to do in order to inherit your portion of my estate, and to inherit basically a role at this Disney-like company. I think Rowan is the youngest of the 3 brothers, and he falls pretty quickly and pretty hard for our main girl, who's kind of like an Imagineer, I guess you could say, at this Disney company, Zara. I think initially she was working at the parks, and she brings a lot of issues to Rowan about like why the parks aren't necessarily succeeding like they used to, and how he could bring like more Disney magic back to the parks or whatever. I found this one a little insufferable at times. I understand why people enjoyed this book. I think if you are a Disney adult, or you like Disney, or you're just someone who likes a quirky heroine, I think you'd love this. That being said, it wasn't my perfect romance. I think I gave this book like 2 or 3 stars. So I will say, book number 2 is a book that I gave 5 stars to. So this is another situation where I really like this author. I really like their work, but maybe the first book in the series is just not for me. That being said, again, I think this book definitely has market, definitely has a lot of fans. Obviously, this one being on the list, none of the other books in the series being on the list, but I would really recommend Terms and Conditions. It's my favorite. And the 3rd one is also really good as well, though I would recommend trigger warnings for that one. Let's move on to number 18, The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This is a book that I recommend to pretty much everyone. It is, I think at this point, my favorite book of 2023, and it is a book that has left a lasting impression on me. This book is about Ryan and Indy. Ryan is a professional basketball player, and Indy is a flight attendant at the start of the story who is going through a bit of a bad breakup. She thought she was going to marry the man that she was with, learned about him in the first book in the series, though these could be read as standalones, and she is looking for a place to live, and who better to live with than her best friend's older brother, who is now looking for a roommate. Well, not really looking for a roommate, but has an empty room at his apartment. Indy ends up moving in with Ryan, and they kind of have the relationship similar to the relationship in Flawless, where the characters are kind of like butting heads. Not true enemies to lovers, but definitely creates a lot of delicious tension. He claims that he does not want to be in a romantic relationship because of some trauma, and she is kind of fighting her feelings for him as well, and it is so delicious. I love the way the hero is so attentive to our heroine. I love that our heroine is so real and raw. She is a little bit quirky, but she's not too quirky. Just the right amount of quirk to where she feels like a real person that you would actually know and relate to and love. Everything about this book worked for me. I did end up crying, and I'm not much of a crier, so would I recommend it? Absolutely. This is a 5-star read. Go ahead and pick this one up. Another book book that I think you should pick up is number 17, which is Mile High by Liz Tomford, the first book in this series. This book follows our two main characters, Xanders and Stevie. Stevie is the sister of Ryan from the second book. She is a plus-size heroine, and she is dealing with some like body confidence issues at the start of the story, and she's also trying to kind of figure out her life. She is a flight attendant. She doesn't totally love her job, and she's also trying to kind of like fight her attraction for the player on the hockey team that she is a flight attendant on. She's not a flight attendant on the hockey team, but the hockey team has a private jet. She is the person who flies on the private jet with them, the flight attendant. She is trying to fight her attraction for Xanders, who is this really hotshot hockey player who has this bad reputation that he doesn't totally love and that isn't totally earned. Over the course of the story, they fall in love, obviously. I mean, it's a fucking romance, let's be real. I loved it. I thought it was super sweet, and I think if you are looking for some real romance and you are someone who isn't just in it for the quick, easy, cheap smut, I think Liz Tomford is definitely an author that you should check out. Spot number 16, a book that I attempted to read yesterday and I just couldn't get farther than like 10% in, is When the Rain Ends by Mary Allen Taylor. I have notes on my phone if that wasn't abundantly clear by me looking down. This book's about our two main characters, Danny and Ella. Danny is 30, Ella is 12. Recently, Danny's ex-husband passed away, leaving Bella without a father figure, and Danny's also losing her vision and maybe eventually will go blind, which is really tough for her because she's an artist, and so she decides she's going to uproot her entire life from the Outer Banks of North Carolina and move inland to a farmhouse that she was really excited about. There were a couple of reasons why I ended up DNFing this book. Number one, this book is not available in Kindle Unlimited, unlike every other book on this list, which is pretty frustrating for me. It was a Kindle like first read or something like that. It basically, you can get a Kindle book for free on a certain list every single month. Is one of them, so I didn't have to pay any money, but it just irritates me that it's not on KU. I also didn't like the way this book was told. It was like third person limited almost. I didn't appreciate that, but it's also a dual POV story, so I have to listen to a 12-year-old talk. And I'm sorry, it just like wasn't really giving romance vibes to me. It wasn't something that I was really truly invested in. And I don't necessarily think you should run out to pick it up. If you are someone who just really gets your rocks off reading, I don't know, literary fiction mixed with chick lit, maybe this book will be for you. I just don't think that most of my romance girlies are going to be really satisfied with this one. But let's go ahead and get into the vlog portion of this video, and I can tell you more about the books on this list and what you should pick up and what you should skip. Do I look like the guy on the cover of that book? First book that we're chatting about. First book that I'm actually sitting down to film. I know. I do this stuff out of order, y'all. My sister's dating my I don't even fucking know. Dead best friend, actually. This book was interesting. It actually turned out better than expected, which isn't saying that much. It didn't piss me off too bad. So this book is about our two main characters, Holden and Lainey, who we call Lala. This book starts with a pretty wild opening. So if you want a book with a wild opening, here you go. Our main character, he's 30 years old. He gets a letter from his 15-year-old self talking about what is most important to him at 15. Maybe to put like, I guess his 30-year-old self in perspective or something. Like he'll get this letter at 30 and be like, wow, like times are so much simpler. The letter is basically him just talking about how awesome getting head is. It wasn't like fun to read. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was funny, but it wasn't like I was laughing with the character. It was more like I was laughing at the character and his characterization. I feel like the book kind of proceeded to characterize this guy as sort of like a good for nothing player, which I didn't totally love and didn't feel totally earned. But anyway, we open up with that letter. Part of the letter says, you know, I really like getting head from this random girl, but wouldn't it be great to get head from best friend's sister or something to that effect? He makes it his mission, I guess, to like reconnect with Lainey, and it just so happens that Lainey is a researcher and needs to do like a 6-month research project in the city, and she's going to live sort of an Airbnb situation at this apartment that Holden owns, and lo and behold, the unit that she's going to be staying in is right next to Holden's. And the story literally proceeds with him basically helping her anytime anything goes wrong. Her car, piece of shit, breaks down, I don't know, 2 or 3 times throughout the course of the story. She breaks a doorknob on her bathroom. She has a leaky pipe, I think, in her kitchen. You own this apartment building. I don't know, for some reason I wasn't getting the vibe that like him and his 4 best friends owned like a really disgusting apartment building, but maybe it is because things go wrong so often. Anyway, Lainey is engaged to someone else. He is a cancer researcher, Warren, the guy she's engaged to, and so she's kind of having to fight her feelings for her childhood crush, Holden, and Holden is trying to not break up Lainey's relationship, obviously, because he's like a good guy. Don't worry, they have phone sex anyway, and she does decide to like break up with the guy she is engaged to. Of course, the thing that like sort of irritated me, I think, when it comes to like the other man plotline is like, if you're gonna do it, I feel like do it in a fun way. Either make the guy like totally despicable or make it like a really angsty thing, like, oh no, like I don't really want her to break up with the guy she's with. You know, you want to give me like an actual dilemma there. This story I don't think did either. Warren, he's a nice guy. He's just very obviously like not right for our heroine, and at parts of the book you're kind of just like, oh, how uncomfortable. She tries to have phone sex with Warren and he's like, I will stick a digit in you. Do we really have to like ham it up? I don't think any guy is really gonna do that, even an awkward one who's never had phone sex. So she does break up with him. That's not even the third act conflict really of the book, so I just felt like this book was a little bit too long. There were just some things, again, I didn't love. I don't mind cheating in books, but I just don't feel like it was done like a fun and inventive way necessarily in this book. Fun and inventive way. Are there fun and inventive ways to cheat? Let me sum up my main complaints. I didn't enjoy the fact that basically the entire book and the entire like chemistry between these two characters is based off of the fact that our heroine is constantly a damsel in distress asking our hero for help. I did not enjoy the boyfriend who is a really nice guy but just like not right for the heroine. I mean, I guess it might be realistic, but it just like wasn't exciting to me. And not even like a boyfriend, but someone she's engaged to. And then I personally just found this book to be entirely too long. I think it was like 400 pages. Like, it wasn't actually a very long book, but the way that this book was set up and the plotting of it made it feel like it was taking forever, because again, it was a series of similar events happening back to back, and I'm just like, can we switch it up? Can we get like other reasons for these characters to kind of be together? She goes to his like shows or whatever because he's a drummer. Like, I swear 5 times in the course of the book, so it doesn't make it exciting or like a place of tension, you know what I mean? I didn't hate this book. It was actually surprisingly well written, and I was definitely on the fence about how I would rate this or if I would recommend it. And I think if you like this author writing duo, I think there's a pretty good chance that you would like this book. I don't think it's a bad one by them. I've read other stuff by them. I think if you are someone who wants something a little more unpredictable, or you're someone who is kind of picky like me, I think you would probably skip it. Not terrible, not amazing. Don't know what I would rate it. Maybe like 2.5, 3 stars. I mean, no, I'm gonna go 3 stars. It was fine. Well, maybe 2 stars. I don't know. I think it's a skip for me, but it wasn't terrible. And it would be disingenuous, I think, to change, because, you know, I was outside gardening.
You dove headfirst into a dumpster, but like just like up to your shoulders, you know? And that's just like the dumpster juice.
Actually,
I know it's
house paint, hair dye.
Hair dye is what I was gonna say.
There's some dirt on here too. This is my outside and gross shirt. Hello. I'm just popping in to tell you that I finished my Dark Romeo, and as much as I would like to say that this book was terrible, I actually really fucking liked it. This one is by Parker S. Huntington and LJ Shen. I don't love either of their work at the moment. I mean, maybe in the past I enjoyed some LJ, but I feel like her stuff tends to be a little repetitive. And Parker S. Huntington, I think, did Darling Venom, which is the one with the like sexy gynecological scene. And it wasn't for me. It just simply wasn't. I'm not saying this book contains that, but the one that I've read by her did. So I wasn't expecting much going into this, and you know what? I can tell you that a lot of people are not gonna like this book, but I did. So this one is about our 2 main characters. Dallas, that's the heroine, she's from Georgia. Doesn't make any fucking sense. And then our hero, you might have guessed, Romeo. He basically approaches her at like a debutante ball sort of situation and gets her in a compromising situation. She is forced to marry this man. He does this so he can get back at a business rival who she was engaged to. And, you know, obviously now she's gonna marry Romeo instead. It's a marriage of inconvenience, I guess, because neither really likes each other. Romeo is kind of a dick, as all of LJ Shen's heroes tend to be, and Dallas is unbearable, but in a way that I really enjoyed. Gave him so much shit. She spent all of his money. She bought a lot of Birkin bags, which is my kind of girl. Oh, she ate a lot of food too. Again, my kind of girl. So she was really, really irritating and immature, and I think a lot of people say that in the reviews for this book on Goodreads. I just like that, you know? I like a heroine who is going to fight back. I think it's fun. Like, if you're gonna have a guy who's a douchebag in a book, you're gonna need a heroine who's gonna be able to like fight back a little bit. Like, I don't want just some meek wallflower. Like, that doesn't really work for me. Oh, and eventually, obviously, he ends up falling for her. And you know what? I think that the way that this book was told worked really well. If you can get past the irritating heroine and you like a douchebag hero, like you're on board. The way that the story was told, I think, was pretty well done. The plotting, the pacing, everything was pretty fun. Only complaint I would say at the beginning was that it felt a little hard to get into. The way LJ Shen writes, and I keep saying LJ because I really felt like this was just an LJ Shen book. It didn't really feel like a Parker S. Huntington book. There were a lot of like name drops of designers and shit like that because they're at this debutante ball and she's describing the dresses and the tuxedos and stuff, and I was just like, calm down. So yeah, that was like really my only complaint. I'm trying to think of other things I didn't like. I mean, was this perfect? No, absolutely not. To make a long motherfucking story short, would I recommend this book? I actually would, and that pains me to say. Full transparency, I have not finished this book, and I've also not finished the next book that we're going to talk about. This one I was intrigued by initially because it was kind of reminding me of Legends and Lattes, which is a book that I know everybody seems to love. But for me, this one just kind of fell flat because it was just so long. I'm still trying to get through it. I just don't know that that's a good sign. I think the audiobook for this book is like 12 hours. It essentially follows this guy who is now the like head cook or head chef or whatever at this like palace. It gives very cozy vibes. He is apparently a witch and doesn't doesn't want to tell anyone that he's a witch, or it's like frowned upon to be a witch. I'm not entirely sure. He has a cat that's familiar, and there are various people who come in and out of the kitchen and like interact with him. And I didn't get far enough to really tell like where the story was leading, but I'm not sure that it really was leading anywhere. It just felt like a typical cozy fantasy, I guess. I mean, I don't know what typical is for the genre because it seems like it's kind of a new thing, but no, I don't think this was bad, but this definitely is not a traditional romance in the sense that like I think a lot of people are looking for. I think Legends and Lattes definitely is more of a romance than this book probably is. I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for. I feel pretty confident in DNFing this book because again, it doesn't like feel like a romance. If you are a big Legends and Lattes fan, I would say maybe like look at the reviews for this book and decide if it's for you or not. I feel like the majority of the Goodreads reviews that I read for this book upon DNFing were like, this book have an editor, it was too long. So I'm glad to know that I'm not alone in that feeling. But yeah, this one just like wasn't totally for me. And I feel like this kind of seems like the sort of book that, I don't want to say people like paid to inflate its spot on the charts, but I do think that does need to be taken into consideration when we see some of the books on these lists. Like, are all of these books really that in demand by readers, or are some of these just kind of like, how did they end up on this list? I feel like there are books that are more popular, you know what I mean? An interesting entry, one that I think, I don't know if I would say it's not worth your time, but I just, whatever. And then Pucking Around. I think this is a book that people seem to really be enjoying, but I am just finding that Why Choose novel is just really not my thing, especially a Why Choose novel that is 600 plus pages long. Come on. I have this complaint about so many books, and I just don't understand why authors can't cut things down. I mean, honestly, I would rather read 200-300 page books with the same story than it be 600 page book. I don't know. It seems unnecessary to me. This book's about our main character who is going to be like the team doctor, or is it like physical therapist or something? And she finds out that a guy that she recently slept with is actually one of the guys on the hockey team. And she also, I guess, enters into like romantic and sexual entanglements with some other guys on the team. And yeah, I don't know. I'm always struck by the realism of these stories. Like, how realistic is this sort of situation for most people? Like, no matter how amazing you are, no matter if your cootie is gold-plated, it just seems unlikely that you would end up with like 3+ romantic partners vying for your attention at any given time. I did attempt to read this book. I think I got a couple of chapters in, and I just wasn't super impressed with the writing. There was like a really heavy emphasis on astrology, and like I'm very into astrology, but like, I don't know, there was a corniness to it that just didn't totally seem like me. That being said, this is one of the books that I am like open to revisiting at some point if enough of y'all tell me that like I definitely need to pick this book up. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I think like the buzz for this one, I don't really understand it. Yeah, I don't know. The only other like promising thing I would say about this book is that I have read in the Goodreads reviews that there is apparently a like male-male relationship as well. So like 2 of the guys are in a relationship. So it's not just like this girl with a bunch of guys who are having to like fight their jealousy about the situation. I guess like a couple of them are in a relationship, which, you know, that's nice. I don't know. I'm just personally more interested in a long-lasting romance than I am with like reading about someone getting all their hole stuffed. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a old-fashioned fuddy-duddy, but I'm just like, whatever. Is this book worth your time? I think it actually probably is. I think a lot of people really liked this book. I am just a stick in the mud, so make of that what you will. Get ready for a mega update, and by that I mean, for some reason, half of the clips for this video I just can't find, so I get to talk about these books for a second time. I'm going to talk to you about 3 of them back to back, rapid fire, kind of, and then we can move on, hopefully, and not have to do me sitting in one place for a million years talking about books. I guess that's sort of the whole point of this, right? Number 11, Dante. This book was not good. I don't really want to wax poetic about like what I didn't love about this book, but if you're not a surprise pregnancy kind of gal or person, I don't think this is going to be necessarily for you. I really didn't like the relationship between the 2 main characters, Dante and Kat. The premise of the story essentially is that Dante kidnaps Kat because this is a mafia story, obviously. He captures her and kidnaps her and brings her to his house and like kind of falls in love with her because her brother, her older brother, maybe younger brother, actually don't really know the ages, can't remember, don't care. He is in trouble and owes Dante money. And so what better way to make the brother pay up by capturing his sister? Does the brother actually care about Kat? No. Has he put her in danger before? Yes, which you learn through the course of the story. This was just a very typical mafia story, but like not in a fun way. There was a lot of essay, threatened and just discussed, not by the hero to the heroine, obviously, but she has trauma in her past, which is mentioned, and we do get some like kind of graphic details, I would say. And then there's an attempt made later on in the book, which again, didn't totally love, just not really my thing personally. I don't love that inclusion in my romance. I like a nice, safe romance, okay? So maybe mafia stories should start for me, but I don't think that's true because I've read other mafia stories that don't have those elements. I guess everybody has their own personal preferences, and that is simply one of mine. I really felt like this book was all sex, no character development or relationship development. Yet a couple of times of these characters talking to each other, but for the most part, it's really just them banging it out in attempts to, you know, convince us that these two are made for each other. I do think he eventually marries the heroine, which is like nice or whatever, but I think it's only because she's having his baby. And there's like a couple of instances where he just like doesn't listen to her. I don't know. It just wasn't for me, okay? It wasn't for me. I think if you're in for some cheap thrills and again, you're just looking for a mafia romance, hey, maybe this is gonna really hit the spot for you. I think you can do better. I really do. I think that if you're looking for a mafia romance, you should go and check out my Goodreads where I have a shelf of mafia romances. Should I do a mafia romance recommendations video? Let me know. I can maybe hook you up with that. I feel like that's something that I haven't really done here on my channel. Obviously a market for this kind of story. I just don't think this is like one of the best. There's some good ones out there. This is just not it. And I'll leave it at that, okay? So is this one worth your time? No. Gave it 2 stars. Moving right along to book number 10, The Summer We Fell by Elizabeth O'Rourke. Finally, an author that I have some experience with and that I personally humbly enjoy. I think Elizabeth O'Rourke is a fantastic romance author. Of all of the romance authors that I read from, she is the one that I would most like to emulate in my own romance writing because she has such a way of creating emotions and feelings and a vibe that is just everything that I'm looking for. I like a slightly melancholy romance. Like I'm not necessarily a rom-com girly, but I do want some lighthearted moments. I want there to be lead up to the sex scenes, etc. And she nails it every time. That being said, this was not my favorite book by her. This book's about our two main characters, Juliet and Luke. At the start of the story, we find out that Juliet is living with her boyfriend's parents. He is in college and she is still in high school. I think she's like a year or two younger than him. And she has had some rough times because she put her stepbrother in the hospital because I think he was trying to come on to her or something like that. And she wasn't having it. So her mom kicked her out of her house and she needed a place to live in. Obviously, she went live with her boyfriend's parents. The people that she's living with, her boyfriend's parents, are incredibly religious and they are very much like, oh, let's wait for marriage kind of people, and she doesn't really like vibe with that. She just had a very different life before she lived with these people and she's really grateful for their help, and so she feels compelled to live the kind of life that they want to make her lead, I guess, or the life that they expect her to have. So she's having to go to church every Sunday, she's having to kind of help around the house and kind of have those traditional gender roles put on her even though that's really not who she is. It's nothing like super terrible, and I think that's what I like about Elizabeth O'Rourke books. Like she's going to send a message, but she's not going to tell you how to necessarily feel about it, and she's not going to take the easy route, right? Like she's not going to make characters that are just like abhorrent for the most part on page. She's going to give you some like room to think and gather your own feelings about her characters, which I really appreciate. So you kind of don't know how to feel about the pastor that she's living with and his wife. Like you, on the one hand, are like grateful that she is out of a bad situation, but you're also like, this is definitely not the place for her. And that is further complicated when we have the love interest of the story come in. Correct, it's not her actual boyfriend, it is her boyfriend's best friend, which, oh, you know, that is my favorite trope. To me, that is far superior to the like older brother's best friend kind of trope. I love the scandal falling for your boyfriend's best friend. Oh, it's so good. You've got a guy who is so different, a boyfriend, I guess you could say, that is so different than our heroine. So you've got this situation essentially where you know that the heroine is not right for her boyfriend, who is kind of religious and wants her to be a certain way. You're kind of rooting for her to get with her boyfriend's best friend because he has similar life circumstances, like kind of a broken home sort of situation, and he sees Juliet. And I think feeling seen is something that a lot of people really want and really crave, and it's something that I don't think is done enough. I have such mixed feelings about this book because I love Elizabeth O'Rourke's writing. I think, again, she does such a fantastic job at making her stories complex and interesting. Her characters do not feel one note ever. Like they always have more to them than just what meets the eye, and I like that she does have kind of a well-rounded story in the sense that it's not just about the romance. It's not just about the banging. You do have complexity there and you're rooting for the characters to have the kind of lives that they want and the romance that they ultimately deserve, which I really appreciate. That being said, I don't think this is my favorite book by her. My issue with this one, and it's not even an issue, it's just like the thing that was sort of missing for me was a sense of like completionism in the story. I feel like there were a few things that we're trying to get done that I don't feel like really were accomplished super well. And I think for me, part of the problem was that it was a dual timeline story. So you have these two characters in the past, obviously, and you get to see sort of like their relationship sort of blossom and unfold when you've got the complication of the boyfriend, I guess. And then in the present day, you get to see their sort of like second chance romance. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know that that was entirely necessary. Like, I understand why it was done, but I feel like it led to the story feeling just a touch disjointed in parts. Relationship development in the present wasn't really there. It was like these two characters were sleeping together, and then they decided that they were going to be together because it was okay after a certain event happens. And honestly, I just really didn't feel like that was enough. Like, if you're going to have a dual timeline situation, I think I'm going to need a little bit more reason for it beyond just the reason that I think a lot of us saw coming as readers of this book. And I don't want to spoil it, so I feel like I'm being very vague here, but dual timeline is something that I think a lot of authors employ, and I don't think it's always necessarily necessary. And I think in this book, it just wasn't necessary. I wish we had just focused on the sort of like present plot line, and I actually think it would have been more compelling had the characters had to work through the things in the past other than revisiting him in the present day. I also felt like it led to sort of a slight corniness that happened in the last part of the book. There's kind of like this twist or sort of like this mystery a little bit, and I don't feel like that was necessary. I really don't, especially again considering we kind of knew where things were headed. If you enjoy this author, like, it's definitely worth giving this book a try. I don't think this would be like the best entry place for Elizabeth O'Rourke books because I do think she's written better things, but I think if you like her, I mean, you're not going to be like super upset after picking this one up. I was kind of between a 3 and a 4. I think I'm going to stick with a 3 for this one. Do think it's worth your time. I don't think it's where I would start with her as an author. So anyway, let's move on to the next book. I've been rambling about this one for far too long. Let's talk about Between Commitment and Betrayal by Shane Rose. So this book's about our two main characters, Declan and Everly. I do have notes. I DNF'd this book pretty early on because it had a very Shane Rose feel to it. And honestly, I had not remembered reading anything from this author previously, but apparently I have, or apparently I attempted to. I think I was trying to read, is it like Corrupt Chaos or something for a video? I can't remember what the context was, but I did try to read that book for a video recently and DNF'd it for the same reasons I'm DNFing this book. And that is that I personally don't really love being thrown into a story and not knowing or really understanding or caring about the characters, and then just immediately leading to sex. Okay? And here's the deal. I know people like their smut, but I don't really like smut when it's about two people that I don't give a shit about. And it's not even that the characters have to be incredibly complex. Like, if this were just a smutty story, I'm not asking for you to give me the character's life story and their dreams or whatever. I am going to need enough tension between the two of the characters for me to really care. That just was not present here. It was very much lacking. So the story follows Everly and Declan, obviously. Everly is the daughter of a multinational, of a national gym owner, right? Like, he owns a chain of gyms, I guess. He's really wealthy, and she did not grow up with him. So she did not grow up kind of with like a silver spoon in her mouth. And now she is kind of living with him maybe and working with him. He's a little bit protective of her, and so is his business partner, who I suppose is her age or like closer to her age, and he kind of follows her around like a bodyguard, and that's just kind of the vibe at the beginning of the book. She's like teaching a class, and she's gonna go to some party at some guy's house who's like an NFL player, because this gym, I guess, has a lot of like celebrities and people or whatever, like not working there but, you know, exercising there. So she meets an NFL player and she's like kind of into him, and she's gonna go to this party. She goes to the party. Declan like warns her, oh, you're not allowed to go, your dad doesn't want you to go. And she's like, dude, I'm like a grown woman, like I'm gonna go to this party. So she goes, and then guess who shows up but Declan, and guess who takes her to his car? You make me so mad, I just have to wet my whistle with your cooter or whatever. Declan, of course. I just didn't really understand this book. I feel like you're thrown in to a story and you're like, this is the second book in the series, like I'm missing something here. I'm not really understanding like the choices that are being made here with character relationships and also just like with character dynamics. It just feels like a lot way too early on. But no, this is the first book in a series, and I don't feel like the lead up was necessarily there. That's not to say that there were no attempts made at like world building, I guess. Like there's some info dumping, I guess, at the beginning, but it just did not feel masterful. The kind of heroes that Shane Rose writes are just not really for me. They're very like jealous, commandeering, the kind of guy that will like take you home from a party and be like, such a tease, and like, you don't even know what you do to me, I have to get in your pants. And it's just like not really that fun to read for me when I don't care about the characters. I think you know what kind of reader you are. Here's the thing, to this author's credit, I think that she does a good job at the smut. I think the dirty talk is fun if you're willing to overlook all of the other issues. If you're someone who doesn't care and you're just like, I just want smut, I just want some good dirty talking, I think her books could be for you. I think you could have some fun with them. I'm looking for something a little bit more, you know? DNF that book, and I'm grateful that I did. I don't think it's worth your time personally, but to each their own. This is one that I could definitely see some people enjoying and some people just like not loving quite as much. So I'm gonna go get my nails done because they're way too long. You know what's bad when your nails are so long? That you can't even put on your jewelry anymore. Like I can't clasp my necklaces because my nails are so long. So I'll be back hopefully with much shorter nails and more to say about books. Champagne Venom and Champagne Wrath by, is it Nicole Fox? I don't know. The Orlov Bratva duology. I'm going to talk about them at the same time because they were both on the top 20 fucking Kindle charts, and so I got the honor of reading both of these mafia stories. Now, these ones are very similar, in my humble opinion, to Dante. Just in terms of vibes and like plotline, you have an accidental like surprise pregnancy situation where a mafia guy gets a seemingly random girl pregnant and just forces her to like marry him and keeps her under lock and key house arrest, and she has like a strong will that he just seems to really like love and can't get enough of. Okay, yeah, that's basically what this duology is about. You have our two main characters, Paige and Misha. At the start of the story, I was actually intrigued because the prologue, you have Paige in kind of a shitty situation, right? She is being left by her husband, or her husband is going to divorce her, but it wasn't a real legal marriage, and so she has no right to any of his money, even though she started a business with him, and so she is broke and homeless and on the street, trying to find a way to survive for the next 3 days before she can get her new apartment and her new job. Misha sees this when she comes into a pizza place and can't pay for the pizza that she ordered and feels bad for her. I guess he owns the pizza place or something like that. I don't know. He helps her out in this situation, and you can feel the chemistry. I will say, like, I felt a palpable chemistry in this intro, and I was like kind of intrigued. I was like, oh, maybe something good. For once. But it kind of devolved, I would say, pretty quickly. You have a situation where it goes from them just sharing a simple vegan pizza together to him inviting her back to his hotel. They have some sex, and then she finds out that she is his secretary, and then she finds out she's pregnant with his baby, and it all just feels a little bit like 50 Shades meets a mafia story that feels very typical. It just wasn't anything particularly noteworthy, and I have to agree with a lot of other Goodreads readers, which I know I mention a lot in my videos, Goodreads readers, but I like to get a gauge and a taste for how other people are feeling about a book so I can tell whether I'm like completely off base here. But I think this book and this duology in general needed an editor. This first book was like 600 plus pages, the second book was 400 plus pages, and not only was it like too verbose and there were too many repeat scenes, you also have like moments of, you know, something happens in the first book that gets mentioned again in the second book in a completely different manner, a way that doesn't make sense. I feel like an editor probably could have picked up on those discrepancies and those like, I can't think of the word. Let's go with discrepancies, where things just don't add up. The writing wasn't terrible. I think that it was better than Dante, but like how much better? I don't know. How can I quantify these things? Because it's all the kind of story that I'm just like not particularly interested in. I don't really like surprise pregnancy novels, especially if it's like, oh, surprise, I'm pregnant with twins. And yeah, I don't know. I also think this book tried to be something that it just couldn't really pull off. It's supposed to be sort of a shared trauma here because the hero has someone he lost in his life. Heroine, same deal. And so they talk about their trauma together, but it doesn't really ever bring them closer. And she kind of like uses sex to get him to like actually pay attention to her. I don't know. I just like didn't, it was just whatever. Like I read this duology very quickly this morning and I will honestly probably forget about it very quickly. So these books that I think you need to like rush out and pick up, no. I think if you're looking for like a passive mafia romance series and you like the surprise pregnancy trope, maybe you'll like this, but I just don't think that it had the emotional impact I want a romance to have. I'm saying about all of these goddamn books for the most part because I like a good emotional impact. What can I say? These, I don't know what I would rate, probably 2 stars for both of them, like kind 2 stars, like it could be a 3-star, but I just really don't like surprise pregnancy. I'm gonna go with 2 stars for both of them. Is it worth your time? Why am I even asking this question at this point? You know what I mean? It's like the choice for yourself. I'm gonna say no for me, but maybe it is for you. Folks, we've made it. Pepper has stopped eating his wet food loudly. Sounded like macaroni in a goddamn pot. And we can talk about Haunting Adeline. I'm gonna keep it brief. I was just editing this video up until this point, and holy shit, a bitch can talk. This book was not my cup of tea. I think we could all maybe have predicted that. I think maybe I was more into dark romance back in the day, but I really just felt the same way about this book that a lot of readers who gave this book 1 star did. I don't know what I'm gonna personally rate it, but I really think it's a hard sell for a romance in general to have a hero who assaults the heroine. Whether or not you want to see that is dubcon, whether or not you're into it, whatever. It's just a hard sell. And then additionally, it's a really hard sell when you have that as a component of the story and you also have the hero being someone who is hero for people who have been sex trafficked. Like his whole goal in life is to free women from sex trafficking or just people in general from sex trafficking. Here's the thing. I give you my best advice as to what I personally enjoy, but everybody's going to have their own opinions on books, and I'm not here to tell you that you can't enjoy things. I just really didn't enjoy this. There really wasn't anything that worked for me. Not only do we have those components, obviously, that are problematic. The writing of the story just also didn't really work for me. I think that it felt a little unpolished, which is not something I normally say. I feel like indie romance largely can feel unpolished, and I don't typically mind, but I think it's the way that our heroine spoke in her POV chapters that really just didn't work for me. I'm fine with cursing. I mean, I cuss, like y'all know that too. I just felt a little bit goofy and silly at times, and she also made really poor decisions. There's a part actually where she says something like, oh, I'm not gonna be like a girl in a horror film who gets murdered first or whatever, but she literally is so stupid that she would be. Yeah, I don't know. I liked the concept of having like grandmother's letters because she's living in this spooky old house. I liked the atmosphere at the beginning, but everything else just really fell apart for me. So after about 3 minutes of speaking about this book, I think I am good. I'm good on that. I get why this one's popular. It is definitely very different than a lot of the romances on the market today. You're looking for shock and awe. You're looking for something that just feels, you know, spooky Halloween time, perhaps. But I just think there are dark romances out there that play with darkness in a way that I find more appealing. Some people really want that shock and awe, and I totally get that. I'm just someone who tends to prefer things that get you to question morality and kind of get you to question what's right and wrong. In this book, I mean, I don't think there were any questions. I just feel like everything in this book was like pretty objectively bad. Would I recommend you read it? I think if you want to read this book, you probably already have. And I think if you are looking for dark romance, I do think there are better out there. Oh boy. Okay. Wrong for You by Harlow Ray was not my favorite. I think it just comes down to what kind of romance reader you are. If you're looking for a simple little ditty, this might be for you. If you are looking for something swoon-worthy or even like sexy, I don't think this is gonna work. Now, everybody's definition of sexy is totally different, and maybe this will really butter your muffin. I just personally don't like women's bits described as being like honey flavored, because I just feel like it's unrealistic. And also, like, why is a woman writing that detail in? I don't know. Let's stop perpetuating that myth, right? Everybody knows that cooter is savory. The thing that I didn't like about this book, the thing that made this book not work for me, two things. One, I personally didn't appreciate the way that parenthood was portrayed. Everybody has their own opinions on parenthood, and I totally think that if you don't want to be a parent, you shouldn't have to be a parent, but I didn't like the way that the estranged mother, who obviously like has a third act conflict in this book, basically just abandons her child, and instead of like talking to the father about it, like the man that she had the baby with, she talks to her daughter's like new potential mommy, and it's like, hey, you need to take care of this kid for me. It just felt really odd. It was just the way things were handled, right? And then on top of that, I just feel like there wasn't a basis for this relationship. It was a second chance romance. You've got Harper and you've got Jake, and they've got this like romance at the beginning, but he has to leave her because he impregnated someone else and blah, blah, blah. There was no reason these two should be together. I feel like they had no chemistry. I feel like he was rude to her for basically no reason, and my battery's dying, and honestly, this is a 2-star read, okay? I don't know, I just don't feel like a guy who has been like rude to you for a few years after impregnating someone else should be questing to see your coochie. No. All right, Things We Never Got Over and Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. I'm going to be talking about these books in conjunction because I feel very similarly about both of these books, and I read both of these books before this video even started. So it's been a little bit since I've read both of them, and I feel like I don't want to get in depth about the plots of these books. I think these are two of the most popular books around at this point. I think I read recently, I think I saw this as like a Facebook ad or something. The first book in the series, Things We Never Got Over, was on the New York Times bestsellers list for 32 weeks. So this is a very popular book, and I don't think anything I'm going to say is going to convince you not to read it, change your opinion on it. Like, that's just not going to happen, frankly. But I'll let you know that I didn't really enjoy either of these books, and there's a few reasons for that, and I'll kind of try to share those quickly. First, I just think both of these books are incredibly, incredibly long. I just don't think that either of them needed the page length. There's a lot of like internal dialogue, and the characters just talking endlessly about their feelings for the other person and waxing poetic about their life, and it just didn't feel interesting after a certain point. I feel like I could have cared about these books if they were like 300 pages rather than the 600 plus that both of them are. Additionally, I'm just not a romantic suspense girly. Both of these books have romantic suspense plot lines, which I don't think you could probably tell by looking at both of these covers. They are just kind of like vaguely floral, and I really just don't love that trend. I will be honest, in romance novels at the moment, edit anything to avoid like a naked shirtless guy on the cover. I mean, I don't get it. I like that. Give me a guy with abs. I don't like these covers because they don't tell you what the book's going to be about. In the first book, a small town romance with a girl who is leaving a guy at the altar, I believe. She goes to the small town to help her twin sister, her evil twin sister, get out of a bad situation by taking care of her niece who is being left behind. And while she's trying to kind of figure out her life and kind of like start over, I guess, she meets this grumpy guy who kind of owns the town, and he's an asshole to her for no reason. So that one wasn't my favorite. I didn't like the sexy scenes in the book. I felt like it was too long. I didn't like the suspense plotline that comes in. And then in the next book, we have That Heroes like the hero from the first book, his brother has some like trauma that happens at the end of the first book. Now he's a changed person. We thought he was going to be like the nice hero, but no, we find out that he is also a grumpy hero, and the heroine is like a private investigator or a private detective or something, and she is trying to solve a crime that happened in the first book. I don't know. And it is very heavy on the romantic suspense, and it was just not for me, frankly. I didn't really care about the romantic relationship. I will say, to Lucy Score's benefit, she does do a good job at writing romantic tension. At times I cared about both of these relationships and I wanted to see them get together, but once we get to the sex scenes, I just didn't end up caring because the books were too long. And again, I don't like romantic suspense. I don't know how many times I can say it just doesn't interest me. I like a plotline in my romance, don't get me wrong, but I just don't really like feeling nervous when I'm reading romance. So I'll leave it at that. I gave both of these books 2 stars. They're not my cup of tea, but I know a lot of people connected with them. I think both of these books attempt to have that sort of like emotional pull. Obviously, you've got these grumpy heroes with like traumatic pasts and stuff. I don't think their actions or behaviors are justified, but you know, maybe that's something that you're really into, and maybe you will really enjoy these books. It seems like millions of Americans have. I think these are number 4 and 5, and let's move on to the last few books. Welcome to my closet. I don't often film in here, but the dogs are very noisy upstairs, and I didn't want you to have to listen to that. So instead, we're down here in poor lighting, so I can talk to you a little bit about the book that I just finished, Right Man, Right Time, by Miss Megan Quinn. Megan Quinn is a prolific author who is very successful on Amazon. A lot of people seem to love her books. She does rom-com stuff. Amongst seasoned romance readers and amongst my friends, a lot of us just haven't had the best luck with her stories. It's like we get sucked in and we're so excited, and then they kind of flop at the end, and that kind of happened again here. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy this book, because there were a lot of like funny moments. Megan Quinn does a really good job at writing rom-coms, but certain things just didn't work for me. So this book's about our 2 main characters, Ollie and Silas, I believe. And at the start of the story, Ollie is kind of working on this project that she is doing for her internship. And she got a really shitty assignment for her like final project, and it is hockey. And she knows nothing about hockey. She's a lifestyle girly. She wants to do lifestyle stories. Instead, she has to cover hockey. This is actually a perfect coincidence, because while she is trying to pretend she has like a fake boyfriend, that she's like meeting up at a bar to like impress the people at her internship, I'm not really, it was kind of convoluted. She like goes up to a stranger and it's like, hey, will you pretend to be my date? Lo and behold, Silas does pretend to be her date. He's actually a hockey player, like a really successful hockey player. This works out perfectly because he can help her with their assignment, and he needs a date to a banquet, so they're going to fake date. It's going to be mutually beneficial, and yeah, whatever, symbiotic. They also experience an attraction to each other, which complicates things. I initially really liked this book because I appreciated how there was a little bit of an age gap. She's 21 and he's like early 30s, and she's like, ew, you're old, like I have no interest in you. I found that refreshing because I feel like that doesn't often happen in age gap stories. There's also this really playful banter that happens between the two of them, which I really enjoyed. Like at the very beginning of the book, I was very excited to see kind of where their relationship went, and see where that sexual tension took them. But I feel like the tension honestly kind of fizzled before they even got in the bedroom together for me. Like once they finally started like, you know, bumping uglies, I just didn't care. There were like one too many moments of our heroine talking about giving our hero sloppy toppy, and I just feel like as wish fulfillment, as romance is sometimes wish fulfillment, that didn't feel very wish fulfillment-y for moi. So I didn't love that. And once they finally get to bumping, I was just kind of like, whatever. Don't care so much. It's like the lead up to the sex was better than the actual sex, which happens often, I feel like, in romance, but disappointed me, I would say, ultimately this time. And for me, really the big thing is this third act conflict. The initial conflict of the book is that our heroine is asked to write a hockey story, and she's assigned the story by like a fellow intern or like a higher up intern, but like also an intern who doesn't like her. But she is asked by her like supervisor to write a story that kind of like condemns or makes the hockey team look bad, or like specifically the guy who owns the hockey team, so that that guy can own the hockey team instead. I don't know. It's pretty stupid. And she tells the hero this, which I really liked. I liked that she was really honest, like, hey, I was asked to do this. I don't want to do this. Can you help me find like an alternative? And that was nice, but it became this like whole convoluted thing at the end of the book, which I really wasn't expecting and really didn't appreciate. It just felt really over the top and kind of unneeded. I think you could have a third act breakup, but that just didn't need to be the way it happened. Also, I feel like the hero's reasons for not wanting to enter into a romantic relationship with a heroine were a little bit silly. Yeah, I mean, you can still be like heartbroken about a breakup and still want to enter into another relationship. I don't know, it was just convincing enough. That being said, I liked certain parts of this. I thought certain parts of it were funny. I don't think the humor is going to be for everybody, but like Megan Quinn books, I think this is one of the good ones. I don't know, 3 stars. Worth your time. I think if you're looking for something funny, maybe. I think if you like Becca Mack books, I think you'd really like this because it's hockey romance, and also it has that sort of like continuous banter throughout the entire story. So I'm gonna leave it there. Pick it up, don't pick it up to you, clearly, but yeah, I think it's worth your time. I'm I'm sorry, I really, really wanted to enjoy this book. I picked it for our monthly book club on Patreon, and I really hoped that this would be something that I would like, because I've liked Ebony Perry's books in the past. I think she's a pretty fun author. I wouldn't say she's like in my top authors, but I really do like her series. I don't know, is it the Eden series, what it's called? I've liked the past few books in that series. I think it's fun. I love good small town romance, and she sets a lot of her stuff in Montana, which I think is interesting. I don't think I've read a lot of books set there, but this one was just not it for me. So it's about our main character, Ford, who is a former NFL player, and at the beginning of the story we find out that he used to have a crush on a girl named Millie back in high school or college or something like that. I think it was college. Gets another woman pregnant before he can even get into a relationship with Millie. Like, he's had a crush on her, they've been friends for a while, but he's like sleeping with other people or whatever, and then yeah, he gets another woman pregnant, and he doesn't get to pursue Millie like he wants to. Fast forward a few years, and now he is the head coach for the college that they used to go to, and she is an assistant athletic director. So they kind of like work together, so it's sort of like a workplace romance, sort of forbidden, I guess, because of the workplace aspect. And he also has to take into account the fact that he has a daughter with his ex-wife. His ex-wife is, I don't know, just kind of like a jealous person and like trying to get him back a little bit. She doesn't live in Montana, but she does like travel and visit him or whatever. And so the story is literally just their romance, and I say that because I feel like what was lacking in this story was not like good writing. I guess this is a component of good writing. What was lacking for me was the lack of like true character motivations beyond the romance. And here's the deal. I have really found over time that yes, I want the romance to be about the two main characters, but that does not mean that I only want the book to be about their romance. I want to see our heroine going through a hard time that is complicated by the fact that she is, you know, in a romantic entanglement. I find that that makes the story more interesting. And I didn't feel like either Millie or Ford had very interesting places for their story to go. Like, yeah, sure, Millie's an assistant athletic director. She wants to gain more responsibilities in her career, but I feel like we don't really get to know her beyond that. Like, there's not a whole lot being us interested in these characters and their relationship. And I also feel like we get a lot from Ford's point of view about how he's attracted to Millie, and I feel like there was a lot of tell and not a lot of show there. And we get so much when it comes to, you know, him saying, oh, like that's definitely Millie. Millie's always super sweet. You know, it's unlike Millie to be like this. Instead of just showing us like how Millie used to be, or doing those like point outs, I guess, in like a more subtle way. I don't know. I just read an Emily Henry book, and I will say something that she tends to excel in is like getting us to kind of see a character's backstory and understand it better. I personally just really, really appreciate, you know, I feel like the character dynamics and character relationships are a little bit more seamless and they feel more real. And in this book, why did he like this woman? I don't know. There was a lot of sex, not a lot of substance, and I just didn't ultimately care about either of the characters. So I ultimately didn't care about the book, which is such a bummer because I was so looking forward to this one. Again, it's a monthly pick, and I really thought that this would be, you know, just a banger. It was not, and I'm really excited actually to hop on, you know, my monthly live show and talk to my patrons about this, because, you know, it's cathartic sometimes when you're not the only one reading a book and you can actually like have someone to talk to about it. So that'll be fun. That should be fun. Do I think this book is worth your time? I'm gonna say no. I really think Devney Perry's a fantastic author, but I don't think this particular book is worth your time. But I definitely recommend her Eden series. I liked Juniper Hill. I think I read Garnet Flats as well. But I just don't necessarily love this book, and that's okay. We have reached the end of the road, my beautiful friends. This was quite the experience. I hope that you had a good time, maybe listening to me bitch pretty much incessantly about these 20 books. That being said, if you go back and watch the beginning of the video, you'll realize that some of the best books that I've read this year are actually in the top 20 for Kindle Unlimited. They just happen to be like very low on the list in terms of like, you know, 20, 19, 18. I talked about those first, and so the majority of this video is me bitching, but there were some good gems in there. I think you need to read Flawless by Elsie Silver. I think you need to read that entire series by Miss Elsie Silver. I think you need to read some books by Liz Tomford. I also think you should probably read some Lauren Asher. I think begrudgingly that My Dark Romeo? That one was pretty good too. I think there are like 5+ books at this point that like are pretty good and I think are worth your time. The rest of them just weren't simply for me, but maybe I talked about a book that like had no appeal for me that totally sounds interesting to you. In that case, I'm glad that I did this video and maybe you'll find something new to read. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to my like top 5 or 6 from this list, books that I really think you should pick up. Add them to your Kindle Unlimited TBR, the Kindle Unlimited links for you. Fun making this video. It did take me a hell of a long time to do because some of these books I just really didn't want to read simply, but I love y'all so much and I'm so glad you watched this video. video. Stay till the end, let me know. Appreciate you so much. And until next time.